SMEKaran समीकरण है ये SMEKaran aligning HR to business.
Good evening, viewers, and welcome to SMEKaran episode 2. I welcome you all. My name is Bakshi on behalf of NHRDN Delhi chapter on this very critical initiative taken by NHRDN to talk about SMEs in India, and we have a distinguished panel to talk on that. This is the second episode, and the title of this episode is Best Practices of Human Resources in SME Businesses. We had a fabulous response in our previous episode on 15th of May 2020, where we spoke about the expectations of HR from the business. Without much ado, I would hand the forum over to the President Delhi NCR chapter, Mr. Prem Singh, to take the session forward with his points and thought. Mr. Prem Singh, please.
Good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the SMEKaran 2 session, and a very warm welcome to all the panelists, particularly to Mr. Bakshi, who has joined all the way from overseas. Truly appreciate everyone. Thank you for your time. I know that last 2 days have been extremely challenging for all of us in management field, and particularly for those who have been touched by this legend whose picture you are seeing on the screen right now. I'm talking about none other than late Padma Shri Dr. Pritam Singh, and it's only fair that we pay our tribute to the legend. Padma Shri Dr. Pritam Singh has been an institution builder, and he has been a very strong force not only in the country but also globally in the field of management education. Dr. Pritam Singh was conferred with the Padma Shri Award by the Government of India in 2003, and he was the first one to be conferred with that kind of a award for the management education and the contribution that he made, which all of us are the beneficiaries of. Dr. Pritam Singh held the position of director for MDI. In fact, he was re-invited again to head this position again in 2003 and 2000, going up to 2006. Between 98 and 2003, he was also the director of IIM Lucknow, and his last stint in the field of education was at IMI, where he was the Director General at the helm of the institution. Dr. Singh has published over 60 research papers in various international journals, and he has been a globally sought after speaker, and he addressed several conferences internationally and nationally both. He was a thought leader, and he made a tremendous difference to a lot of CEOs. In fact, he was the consultant and a coach to more than 200 CEOs across the world, both in public as well as private sector. In spite of all of these accomplishments of Dr. Singh, I must also say he was a great human being, very warm, very affectionate, and very humble and down to earth. He was one of the finest human beings that we have seen. While the legend has passed away, but his legacy continues. While it's a big loss to all of us, it's a loss to the academia, it's a loss to the management education field, it's a loss to the corporate world, but I also have to say that life has to move on, and the biggest support that we can draw for all ourselves is the inspiration which he has given to all of us. So my invitation to each one of us is, let us draw the inspiration from his teachings, from his whatever he has been propagating all his life, and we use that force to deal with this situation, to deal with this loss. As a mark of our respect, tribute to this legend, I would invite all of you to take a silence of 1 minute in his honor. Thank you all very much, my friends. Thank you for your silence. And may I also share on behalf of the Delhi and NCR chapter with all of you that as a mark of respect, we are planning to hold a memorial lecture in the honor of Dr. Pritam Singh, and most likely we will be holding on his birthday, which happens to be on the 19th of November. We'll share the details with you as soon as we are ready, but I thought we should mention this to all of you so that everyone is aware. So with this, I thank you all very much for your attention, and I now hand it over to my colleague, Ms. Mamta Vasan. Over to you, Mamta.
Thank you, Premji. On that somber note, I think Dr. Singh would be very happy that we're holding the second episode on a very important subject. This is Mamta Vasan, and I'm happy to share with you that we have a very illustrious panel with us today for the best practices implementation as we transform HR and SMEs and look at the various challenges and opportunities. We have senior representation from business as well as from HR. From the owners, we have Mr. Rajiv Chawla, who's the founder and chairman of the Jairaj Group of Companies. We have Mr. D.K. Bakshi, who's the chief mentor and CEO of the Global Talent Company. We have Vineet Tukral. Mr. Vineet Tukral is the director, Microns India. And from HR, we have Mr. Rajiv Kapoor, who's the executive director and CEO, Group Head HR, UNO Minda, as well as Mr. Alok Nigam, who's the senior vice president, Group CHRO for the Bhartiya Group. And we have an excellent moderator who is going to keep this, keep the entire panel on their toes and pose extremely challenging and interesting questions. And that is none other than Mr. S. Vardharajan, who's, of course, as we all know, a very senior HR leader, a life and leadership coach, and a mentor. So handing over to Mr. Vardharajan, and have a great evening, ladies and gentlemen. See you at the end of the session. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mamta. It was it's a pleasure to be here, and I have a very good panel here, so I think my talking will be much lesser than what the panel is, because it's a very distinguished panel. I just want to give paint a picture of what the MSMEs are in India today. We have approximately 65 million MSMEs in India, employing almost 120 million, which is about 40 to 45% of the industrial workforce in the country. They account to almost 95% of the total industrial units, and 45% of the exports come from the MSMEs. They contribute today almost 28% of India's GDP, and the target which we have set for ourselves as a country is 50% exports of GDP from MSMEs. No wonder the government is focusing a lot on the growth of MSME, because they know that it is absolutely critical for the overall growth of the Indian economy. With so much at stake, are the MSMEs focusing enough on HR practices to attract, retain, and grow their employees? Because in any organization, people are the assets, and people are the people who will be taking the company forward. While most of the MSMEs focus on transactional and compliance-related aspects of HR, I believe that very few look at strategic HR or transformational HR, as I call it, which is like talent management or performance management, engaging employees in a formal manner, learning and development, compensation, and everything else. So while many of the large organizations were very small when they started and grew through good and focused practices, what is the difference between those which grew and those who did not grow as much? I have personally found that the success came when the owner or the promoter of the MSMEs focused a lot on transformational HR. So what we'll discuss today with the distinguished panelists is, when is the right time for MSPs to invest in transformational HR? Is it at the beginning, or at the growth stage, or at the evolution stage? What is stopping MSMEs from investing in transformational HR? Is it lack of funds? Is it lack of will? Or is it lack of expertise? Earlier, only big firms invested in transformational HR, but of late we find that more and more smaller ones are also implementing it because of the importance. So to deliberate on all this, let me kickstart by asking the panelists. I'll ask some pointed questions initially, and then at the end of it, we'll take questions from the audience as well. Vineet, let me start off with you. If we see transformational HR as very critical for success of MSMEs, why do you think MSMEs are hesitant in investing in this area? Is it because they see this as a cost? Why is it so? What are your thoughts on it?
Well, sir, I would like to put it this way: the transactional HR is the mantra of these days, and is the critical for any organization to have the maximum productivity of the organization. It would be inappropriate to say that MSME don't want to invest in HR. Many SMEs do invest in HR, but when the company is small, normally owner or the promoter of the company does multitasking, and consciously or unconsciously he becomes the HR leader. So this thing is that MSME cannot be successful without investment in HR. Maybe initial stages, maybe at evaluation stage, or maybe growth stage. But I feel it should be a point, the point should be made that we should, right from the beginning, even though we are not able to hire HR professional, but we should give focus on HR so that we can grow in a long run, because we have a vision, we have a purpose to create an organization and to reach a level where we want to be.
Vineet, you're right. And as you are rightly saying that the importance of HR is very critical, and you as an owner is seeing it. But why do people see this as a cost and not as an investment?
Definitely, it is obviously an investment. It's not a cost. Any promoter would invest in a good machines, good equipment, good infrastructure to make a quality product. But it cannot get a best performance without good people. Without good people, it is the people who basically make the difference. There are always a need for efficient, passionate, and committed people who want to see the career with the organization. The purpose of HR is to maximize the basically output of the organization and optimizing the effectiveness of the people. So it's an investment. I'll rather say it's not a expense. Or
Thank you, Vineet. DK, as a CEO, do you think the HR practices which are prevalent in large corporates or MNCs can be adopted in MSMEs, as you are aware? And what do you think is appropriate? When do you think it's appropriate to introduce them? DK?
Yeah, I was on mute. Yeah, it all depends. It all depends the way you move forward your organization. In the initial stages when we have organization, we go for basic statutory and other HR practices. But the moment you start growing, you need to look at, I want to talk about something which is very important here. India is going to be post-COVID, a great opportunity for the global world as a global supplier. So when we are going to be the global supplier to the world, therefore the practices also need to move forward. I am looking at our Indian SMEs. We do work for Maruti Suzuki, where we audit HR and IR into various SMEs. And SMEs from 100 crores to 1,000 crores. Now, all these companies have got their own practices in place. So they need to evolve with the way they are moving forward. So in case they start exports, the moment they start export, the companies will have a parameters, including performance management system, including employee engagement model, including reward and recognition, including talent development. So everything will be in place like ISOs, like Kaizen.
Okay.
So it will keep on moving. So it will step by step, it will keep on moving. Yeah.
Great. Thanks. Keeping this in mind, Rajiv Chawla, I think you wear a double hat of both being a policy influencer as well as a CEO of a company. Many times the people feel that introduction of transformational HR actually slows them down, which is against the norm of an MSME, which is speed and aggression. There's a lot of speed in what MSMEs do their business on, and there's a lot of aggression which they show in the marketplace. And these transformational HR to follow a particular process, to follow a particular practice in terms of people, actually slows them down. What are your thoughts on this?
Hi, good evening, everyone. In fact, both as an entrepreneur with my own individual experience of about 30 years, and then, of course, as representative of IMSME of India, which is one of the largest networks of entrepreneurs in India. Let me tell you that it's not a question of speed. And in fact, if you ask me, sometimes when I delegate something, it gets implemented much faster than I possibly ever can do myself. Having said so, let me mention, and earlier also some speakers have mentioned, that it's a question of growth. As an entrepreneur moves, or let us say typically starts as a startup, as a micro enterprise, graduates to small enterprise, and then to medium, let me tell you, alongside this journey, keeps moving the evolutionary model of HR practices. Teams keep getting built, and delegations and other responsibilities, they become more transformational later on than from initial transactions. So let me tell you one thing. Even as a micro entrepreneur, I'm sure people take care of their small teams. It is another matter that maybe at that time the team does not consist of a so-called HR head or an outside person handling the HR, where the entrepreneur himself is playing the mother role or the father role or the HR role, and keeps the flock together. And then, of course, as the size and operations of the enterprise grows, then comes delegation, bringing in new people, bringing them into the culture of the organization, allowing them to develop the culture. And if one does that, only then can one move from small to medium. But let me tell you that the journey from micro to small is much simpler, and an entrepreneur perhaps can do himself or herself. But the minute we talk about a small enterprise which has to graduate and grow to become medium, when it is exactly at this stage that the new thought process has to come in, the change management has to come in, and this change management has to come from the entrepreneur himself. He has to take a step back and bring in new people, help them develop, and help them take the reins of an organization. And if one can actually move to medium, it is at that stage that one can look at the stock exchange, the listing, the corporate-like culture. So this is a very critical stage for transformational HR.
Great. one common theme which I'm hearing from all the three of you, Vineet, Rajiv, and DK, is that growth of an organization requires transformational HR, and that is when you start looking, the SME owners start looking at it. Rajiv, I just want to build up on this. Many of the SME owners I have spoken to always believe that they find it extremely difficult to attract the right HR talent. So, what is, in your own opinion, MSMEs have to do to attract the right talent?
I agree with what you are saying.
Rajiv, this is Rajiv Kapoor. Sorry, this is for Rajiv Kapoor. Sorry, Shavla. This is a problem when you have too many Rajivs here.
No, I think carrying on from what we just heard, I think there is always a challenge to attract the right talent for any owner at that level. I think there are certain issues, and I've been lucky to be associated with a lot of such people who have been running these kind of industries, and Rajiv knows that, and he himself has been a part of those associations. So we observed a lot of things, and one of the things which I think why we have a challenge here is the way the talent is treated at these in these kind of industries. And when you are looking at an MSME, it is more about the owner. It's about one single individual. It's not about the team. And it is again a question of letting go. Because I think the definition of HR prevalent in these kind of units is more of personnel and administration as it used to be, not HR. Transformational HR comes much later. So it is more of a P&A. So if P&A is happening, they're happy. So they don't want to graduate beyond that, because then they have to invest more into systems, processes, and then audits and all those things start happening. So that is something which is a challenge. Major issue which I have looked at is the way they treat people. They're more of a disposable assets. They always have a vision statement that people are our most valuable assets, but they are disposable assets. So as long as they are conforming as an employee, they are welcome to be there. But I think whenever the professionalism starts coming in, that is where the clash starts happening. Because the promoters always have a challenge of letting go, because they brought the organization to a level, and there's always a risk factor involved that I have very carefully brought this organization up to this level. Now, should I start trusting anybody else to take on the people issue? Maybe I'm taking a high risk. So that letting go becomes a big challenge. And that is where most of the promoters are struggling. They want to let go, but they rather not, because they don't want to trust and respect the professionalism they have brought from outside. So this is one big challenge. And the professional does get frustrated after some time, and the guy leaves. And then it becomes a chain, getting new people in, and then the reputation builds up that nobody stays in the organization, and that's what happens.
Rajiv, you brought a point about this is when a professional actually joins the SME. But many times you find that the SMEs they can't either afford to hire SME for a HR person, or they are reluctant to. What you mentioned is more reluctance. But how is the cost a factor?
No, let me tell you again, I'm talking from my experience. I've seen organizations who started small, but they're very focused on their people agenda. The people agenda grew along with the organization. So the people who were there at the beginning of the organization, they transformed and graduated into good HR professionals. So they also grew with the organization. They brought positive and professional systems into the organization. So it's not a question of hiring from outside. They grew those people. They were there when the startup happened, and they are doing extremely well. They've learned all the professional nuances of professional HR. And these organizations actually have grown better than other organizations if you compare. If wherever the people agenda is linked to the strategy of the organization, these MSMEs have done extremely better than others.
Okay, thank you. Alok, we've been hearing about how critical it is for MSMEs to focus on transformational HR. But in many cases, you have seen it, I have seen it, but they have not gone beyond the usual transactional work or the compliance work. Why is it, in your own experience, do you think MSMEs shy away from this approach of transformational HR? Do you think it's a cost issue, or is it intent, or is it usefulness as they don't see it? Because all of them are saying that it's very useful to have transformation HR.
Rather, in my view, it is not just about cost. Cost may be an important factor, but as SME organization starts growing, uh, the cost issue takes probably a backseat. I think,
Okay.
like Rajiv said, that when an owner or an entrepreneur starts an organization and he grows that organization, and it is his vision and dream, right? Then sometimes, and most of the times, I would say, an entrepreneur is not able to see the convergence of his dream, his vision, and his story with what an HR manager or a HR professional will be able to deliver. Why is it so? This is because there have perhaps he has not been exposed to favorable experiences of successful organizations, successful enterprises, which have delivered well because of good, robust, transformational HR practices. I think
Mhm.
more than the intent and more than the cost, it is their ability to see a big picture how an HR organization and HR setup, HR professional can make things happen, can make magic happen. And when an entrepreneur and an SME owner starts seeing that big picture, he starts seeing those favorable experiences, he starts seeing those stories where an HR, robust HR has transformed the organizations. They start embracing. They start embracing, the the purpose of HR, getting good
Mhm.
HR talent. I think there have been a lot of good stories, lot of good experiences we have seen in our experiences.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh, DK, let me come back to you. I know that you have influenced quite a few MSME business promoters to embrace this transformational journey and also get them focused on the progress. Can you briefly share one case study in either India or globally on how you influenced the promoters and what came out of it?
Yeah. First of all, let me clarify here. This event is a co-hosted by India SME Forum.
Okay.
Somehow till now, we are not been able to talk about India SME Forum at all. And I represent today India SME Forum here.
Okay.
And somehow it has been missed till now because I got the message from my president that India
Okay.
SME Forum is there. Okay, now coming to your specific question, I have many examples, but I have to quote only one. Even you remember when you were in 229, just opposite 229 Okra Industrial Phase 3, Alok was part of the team. Even from that perspective, we have done a lot of work here. Globally done a lot of work. I will give a simple example of a local company in Rewari.
Okay.
And I would give the name of the company, and they are an SME. They are suppliers to Maruti, Tata Motors, and their name is Coventry. They are in the sprints and rings. And this company is 18th, 19th July 2018. I come from Bangkok. I do a program, signature program, one dream, one team, and we create a mission 4500 by 2020. I repeat, 4,500 metric tons by 2020. With Mr. Raj Babna, the owner, Akshat Babna, his son, who is involved in the business, and his 14 people. And I want to tell you, and this is let it be recorded, and Mr. Babna must be right or maybe hearing this, we transformed the organization with complete manufacturing excellence, HR excellence into before Diwali 2019. They were at 45002020. That means even the company which was not even making money, and they reached to a stage where they made money. And not only that, it is not only the top level. Entire company, including the unions, the associates, they are married to this concept of 450020. You could check workers and associates wife at home, she will talk about 450020. what I'm trying to talk here is the owner himself is number one HR. He's a great HR person. He did not have a right person to start this and to take this journey. So similarly, globally, there are a couple of more examples which I can share, but I have to share only one. So it is possible.
That's a good example which you shared.
Absolutely, and it's very clear.
And what I get out of that is, if the owner takes up the HR as a baby of his, okay, and focuses on HR and spends time on HR, because many of these people believe that if they spend more time on HR, they may not have enough time for other strategic business. So it's possible that if you spend enough time on HR, and you will be able to get it forward. The second thing which I got out of what you said, DK, is that if you have a clear vision and statement and a goal, then the entire organization can be rallied around it. And that's a good example. Thank you. Thank you so much for that example. Alok, let me ask you. You have been in the HR domain for a long time, and can you share just one practice that you have introduced in MSME, which you believe helped in the growth of SME? My focus would be on performance and rewards, if possible, so that we can get a array of these roots of HR to focus on. So why don't you give us an example of performance and rewards, what you have done in that area?
Yeah, sure, Raja. So this was about, let's say, 15, 16 years back. And this was a company I joined in 2003, 2004. Company was into consumer electronics, IT products. It was a small company. By the definition of SME, it was at that time 72, 74 crores of business. The company had all kind of practices as far as performance and rewards were concerned. There was what we call performance management system today, which was more a compensation management system in those days, right? There was no handshake which was happening between, let's say, a business planning and a performance planning, and therefore the rewards were also, pretty wavering, which was not actually linked to how your performance is. First thing that we did was we defined the productivity norms in the organization, and we realized that there were no matrices. We were talking about that we need to increase people productivity, we need to increase people's performance, but there were no matrices. And then we started introducing matrices. We learned that the design of the organization design was important, right? There were a lot of sales offices across the country. There were a lot of service centers across the country, but there was no productivity measurement that was happening. What we did was a little transformational work in the organization design space first. We applied the basic principles of organization design. There was nothing rocket science about it. We said, what is, let's say, how many levels are there in the organization, let's say, from the top person to the end customer. More the levels, more complexity. We really simplified that. Then we looked at, how many employees in the organization are in the customer-facing role and how many at the back end. So we defined that and we simplified that. What should be the T-tail ratio, let's say, that the organization should be, right? We again applied the principles of organization design, like intra-level reporting, intra-band reporting, etc. So we corrected that. When we corrected that, we could reach to a scientific way of performance planning. And this myth that performance is all about appraisals and salary increases, right? We changed the concept. We said that if performance planning can be done right, performance measurement or performance management at the end of a particular period, year, month, quarter is an easy task. And why the business planning cannot be linked with the performance planning. There has to be a handshake between the two. Right? So we introduced those things, and I can very proudly say whenever I interact with the people who are still there, or the chairman of the company from 74 crores in those days in 2004 has now grown to what, 5,000, 6,000 crores of company in
Wow.
2018. And whenever I talk to those people, and whenever I talk to the gentleman who is the chairman and promoter, he said, Alok, some of the things that we did right in 2004, and we have carried that to various HR or people who have been there. But we have maintained what we started in those days, linked our rewards to the values of the organization. They still practice. And I really, really feel satisfied and elated when people say that those practices have helped organization in reaching from 74 crores, what it is today.
Great. That is a great example, Alok. And what I get out of this, taking on from DK's goal focus and vision focus and aligning it, you also created a very clear goal focus, productivity norms, and also constant measuring and linking rewards to performance, which made people realize that if they perform towards that goal, their organization grows and they also grow. Wonderful example. Thank you so much. Rajiv, can you, from your own experience, share an example of how you built culture in MSME? Because I always say that the basic tenet on which all the HR practices or the entire organization will sustain and grow is when they have the right culture in the organization. Culture eats strategy for breakfast is told, but I see that happening in almost every industry. So just share a practice of how you built a culture and how it helped in the growth. This is Rajiv Kapoor.
Okay, I hope.
Rajiv, you are on mute. Rajiv, you are on mute.
Yep. So I'll share an example which started in 2008, and I'll not name the organization, and we are still very much associated. I am associated with that from an as a friend. So that organization was known to, let's say, hire and fire kind of people, very high level of attrition in that organization, and nobody used to stick in that organization. So we used to meet in our association meetings, and also this discussion started happening. And then I got a request that can you help and support us in making a proper system for our people. And that is where I think the HR journey started in the organization. And that time the organization used to be about 350 crores. It wasn't a small organization at that time also. Now it is about close to 2,000 crores. And what we listening, we added let's say skill of listening in the organization, that you may have to listen to your employee.
Rajiv, you've gone on mute again. Rajiv, you have gone on mute again. We can't hear you, Rajiv. Can't hear you. No, you're not audible, Rajiv.
Everything is fine here.
Now I can hear you.
Okay, fine. So I was saying that we first started let's say a habit of listening to the employees. So we had those listening forums incorporated there. Then we looked at the comp and ben philosophy of that organization. Now we had given them a mandate that we have to hire the best of the talent. You have to pay them accordingly. So the comp and ben structures were looked at, and although it was difficult at that point of time, but I think the promoters stressed and allowed us to make those comp and ben structures. And later on he thanked us because we could get the best of the people, and those people are still around in the organization. So that really transformed the entire thing. Then we also developed an agenda for learning and development in the organization. What is the value proposition for the people you hire? So they should look at their own development in the organization. So that also started happening, and I'm very happy to share that journey is still going on. So they've grown about 6 times from the time we started the journey, and I think he's one of the most respected industrialists around, both from the business practices and from the people practices front. He's almost a benchmark in the area. So I'm still in touch with him, so that these are the kind of experiences we shared, and I witnessed that.
Wonderful. Let me share, my own experience of building culture in the organization. Culture always flows from the top. It is very, very clear that the leadership in the company creates a culture for the organization. So I used to be in a company called SMEKaran, which is what DK was mentioning about 239. We started off with almost nil employees, and we were about 10, 15 of us when we started, and we grew it to about 16,000 people after 4 years' time. In the third party BPO business, everyone said BPO is a sweatshop. You can't create culture in the organization. But we went on to create some of the best cultural aspects in the organization. What did we do? Very simple. We created values and operating principles in the organization. We ensured that these operating principles were converted into behaviors. So every employee, when the person comes in, knows what the operating principles are, what the values are, and what the behaviors linked to these values are. And once we saw the behavior being exhibited, we said, okay, we'll reward them on the spot. So anyone who practices the behavior which is there as per the values of the organization got rewarded. On the other hand, when someone did not behave in that particular manner, they were pulled up. There was a reprimand and they were pulled up. So as a result, people started understanding the boundaries within which they operate. And this is also one thing which led where these leadership was very, very focused on walking the talk, practicing what they preach. And when someone did not live by the values of the organization, it was more stringent action at a senior level than at a junior level. So that we said that level of hierarchy does not matter as long as you live the values of the organization. And I think this one basic stuff of creating a values behaviors and ensuring people, and as Alok was saying, we also linked it to performance appraisal at the end of the year and started rewarding them. So to that extent, that is how we build a culture. And one more area where I find MSME is also struggling is hiring. Hiring for their employees at junior level, middle level, and senior level. So I'm going to talk about the same example of SMEKaran. SMEKaran was a not known entity. No one knew the brand. There was nothing. But we started creating our brand around the practices which we started projecting. We started hiring for attitude and train for skills. Look, at those days, I'm talking about 2000, we had to reach out to candidates, loads of them. We wanted English-speaking candidates. So what did we do? We did not advertise. We went to churches. We put up our notices in churches because that was an English-speaking population. We went to coffee parlors like Cape Coffee Day and Barista. I hear a lot of noise from someone's mic. Is it possible for them to please put it on mute? Okay, thank you. So we said we started selling a dream and the future opportunity through the owner. So the owner's involvement in hiring became very critical for the top 2 levels in the organization. And in these days, you can cut down on hiring time and cost as well through innovative ways which are available in the market. Take, for example, video hiring. I know a company which hires through video where you give a set of questions, the person answers them. Their technology, AI technology, actually goes through 48 parameters and creates the personality profile of the person and tells you whether they fit you or not. And so your time to hire goes down. Your SLA to hire is very good and not very costly, between 125 to 150 per candidate. So there are innovative ways by which SMEs can look at hiring as well. Now, so we have heard some of the, on goal setting and vision creation, performance and rewards, and culture building are the 3 areas where we said that what are the best practices and what people practice. Now I'm going to look at some. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Raja, just wanted to add one thing, and carrying on from what DK Bakshi ji just mentioned. on the goal setting. So I just wanted to quote one more example how HR got into the, let's say, business transformation also, not just the HR transformation, the business transformation angle. So he started with having a vision and a goal for the organization. So that exercise in one of the SMEs was led by HR and completely done in-house, not from an external consulting source. It was done completely in-house. People's voices were captured, their thoughts were captured, and was transformed into a vision. So that vision was commonly owned by everyone in the organization. And after that, the goals were set that where do you want this organization to be after, let's say, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. And then with each goal, I think what HR can do for these goals, they may be just business goals, also just numbers, finance numbers, but where does HR come in? I think that nuance was added, and that really transformed the thought process of the promoter that yes, HR is in everything. So I think then the HR strategy was linked with that goal, and everything what happens in that organization is through that strategy sheet. So that's again a small enterprise, but this is the path they are taking.
Thanks, Rajiv. Good that you mentioned. Another point which you mentioned, I thought of building on was communication to employee communication. Which plays a very critical role in any organization, more so in MSMEs. When they are small, the owner is able to talk to everyone and say, okay, this is it, and everyone is, they create a sense of belonging. But when the MSMEs start to grow, you need to have very clear channels of communication. And these channels are what it's not only communicating from the management to employees, but also from employees to management. You talked about listening posts. I think that's a very critical. Listening posts are the most critical part. I know companies which do a lot of employee feedback surveys, but what they do is they just take the feedback and they don't even come back to an employee to say what happened in that. So it's necessary for us to go back to an employee and say, yes, we have heard you. We will do this. We will not be able to do this. Employee doesn't say that you should do everything which I asked you to do. Employee is asking for saying that please listen to me. DK, go ahead.
Yeah, in fact, on this communication, it is certainly important all the time to keep both sides on. I have many examples, and it's another example in Bhiwadi, which is a company owned by Rajesh Podar, Paracord, and they have 5 units in the country and 1 in Thailand. Now look at this gentleman, this business owner. When the lockdown started, he went to his employees, he said, I have been always motivating you. He came on a Zoom, I have been always motivating you. And to top 30 people, he said, how will you motivate me to remain in this business? Oh my God. And I want to tell you, will you believe what has happened? All these 30 leaders came out with a lot of thinking, and there's a roadmap which has been created that the employees are, see the communication, power of communication. Employees have built up a complete roadmap so that they remain in the business. Good. So when you do two-way communication, both sides, it's possible to create a great communication, and you can actually win over. You can be much better. I always say, Raja, MSME HR practices in some of the companies are even much better than a multinational.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's great to hear.
Dabas Saab other day called me. He said, I still remember of 1997, where you came in 2000, SEPA and EAPA. And what was SEPA and EAPA? All of is a witness. Super Emergency Performance Appraisal. And Mr. Jain, he is no more, he has been my guru. Super Emergency Performance Appraisal in 3 months, the owner.
Okay.
And the next is another appraisal. So within a 6 months time, we used to decide. So I am saying that it is not necessary to be a multinational, for sure.
Thank you. Rajiv, you had to say something before we go to the
I just wanted to add 2 dimensions. What my experience in an MSME is, I think when you talked about communication, obviously it is one of the most important aspects. Now, mostly if you look at the MSMEs, it is more adult to child conversations happening in an MSME. So I think that flavor, when you change from an adult to adult conversation, the transformation starts happening. that's an experiment I've done, and it has really succeeded. So adult to child, and people get used to that in an organization. Adult to child conversation, they always look up to the parent for any instruction they have. So that empowerment delegation we talk about, it never happens. So I think when the adult to adult conversation starts happening, things start transforming, and that's
Okay.
that's the first part. Second is explaining the why. Sorry, I'm just taking a minute. Explaining the why, because one is that you give a diktat, and there are organizations which, okay, fine, go do this. This is the new agenda. This is the new plan. The moment you start explaining the why behind it, I think that is the role HR starts playing, and championing the people, going to people, talking about why are we doing this. I think then people rally behind that point,
Okay.
and that's the transformation HR can bring in.
Thank you so much. Alok, I saw you raise your hand. Alok? Alok, you're on mute. You're on mute. We haven't started to lip read as yet. You want to say something, Alok?
Yeah. I think it was muted from the system backend.
Yeah.
No, on the communication that we were talking, and Rajiv gave a good example. Mr. Bakshi gave a good example. I used to work for a telecom organization, a pretty large telecommunication, and one of the reasons of success of Bharti Airtel, about which I'm mentioning, was about communication. Was about employee communication, was communication across lateral communication, top-down communication, bottom-up communication, and the chairman of the company and pretty senior leaders of the company, they used to believe that any time and every time an event happens in the company, good, bad, ugly, people need to be communicated rather than hearing from Economic Times or from other channels. We should be able to communicate to the people first. And I remember there was a rule, there was a diktat in the company that any employee communication forum, when it begins, it has to begin with what was promised last time in terms of communication. What were the points on which we were supposed to come back? Have we communicated back to people or not? So across a multi-location organization, as we all know, across the country, there was a very, very robust mechanism of communication, and people used to be benefited by that. And I personally have been benefited a lot of times by seeing how people used to communicate.
Okay, thank you, Alok. Now this, I'm going into a little of a rapid question. There's only one question, which is common for everyone, and I want a very short answer for each of these. So let me start with Rajiv Chawla. Rajiv, at which stage should transformational HR be introduced in an MSME? And is it initial stage? Is it an evolution stage? Or is it a growth stage? And whatever you choose, why you chose that? It's exactly 2 minutes each. You're on mute. Rajiv, I can't hear you. Rajiv Chawla, you can't hear me?
I think it's muted from the back end.
It's muted from the back end, yeah.
Okay, great. It was muted from the back end.
Yes, please.
Well, it has to be at the growth. It has to be at the growth stage. And one major reason is, let us say a small entrepreneur, and I'm talking about a small entrepreneur, the MSME, the S in the MSME. Let's say an enterprise makes about 1 crore, or let's say 2 crore, and they have to bring in some people, let us say, which cost about, let us say, 50 lakhs. So this is almost 25% to 50% of the net profit the organization makes. And it would have taken them years to reach this stage. So therefore, I believe this kind of an investment has to come midway, 1. Okay. 2, hiring has to be extremely important, because initially, sometimes the fingers get burnt. So if the initial, experiences are not good, I have found enterprises going back on the transformational HR practices.
Okay.
And third, very important is that as this develops, I believe this is so critical, and every entrepreneur realizes it is not generic that entrepreneurs don't want to delegate or they don't want to, see their organizations transform. It is just that personally they lack the skill. Their experience has been totally self-driven and doing things themselves, and therefore delegation does not come naturally to them. And then, of course, is the resource. So therefore, whenever an organization develops a vision, of course, it's the chicken and egg story. Sometimes you cannot create a culture or a vision because of the lack of good HR and vice versa.
Okay.
But it is a call that entrepreneur has to take.
Okay. Vineet, as a business owner and a business driver, when do you think transformational HR needs to be introduced?
What I feel is there is no thumb rule for the at what stage this transformational HR needs to be introduced in a SME. It's totally depend on the vision, the long-term perspective of the promoter and the business model at what you are aiming and whatever we want to be. Initially, the promoter, obviously, when you start an enterprise, we are working at a micro level. And obviously, there are no finances that time. Initial promoters, only the promoter or owner act as a HR because of the uncertainty of his business. Just started a business. He's not sure whether he's going to succeed in that or he's going to achieve what he has aimed at. And uncertainty, business and money constraint also plays a major, because I've been running an enterprise almost for 15 years now, and I've been doing reasonably well and working with good OEMs. And I also got into transformational HR maybe 2-3 years ago. Till 12 years ago, I was just managing with, maybe I had a consultant and people who was managing my affairs of time management, role, salary, all this, what do you call it, transactional HR. And but to execute the mission in the long run, because ultimately those companies who have become big today, they also started with a small enterprises. If they had a vision, they had the strong fundamentals. That's why they were able to reach that level. What I feel is, to execute this mission and vision, we definitely need to have a focus on HR right from the big inception of the company.
Great.
But most of the companies, like people like us, they plan for this transformational HR at evaluation stage.
Okay.
So that's what I feel. That's what I have done for myself.
Thank you.
And I think I'm doing okay with that.
Thank you, Vineet. That's a good experience you shared. DK, exactly 1 minute for you.
I have a straight example of a company which was 160 million US dollars in 2003 when I landed in Bangkok. And today is 12 billion US dollars around the world. 65 locations, #1 into PET in the world. Now, what did he did different, Mr. Alok Lohia? He himself is a great HR person, and I created the vision, mission, values of that company in 2003 with people first as value, corporate governance, and customer centricity. And people ask me, what are you doing? It's not possible. So what I'm trying to say here is that you have to move by step. And the moment we started going to one side to North Carolina, one side to Alabama, one side to Lithuania, one side to Romania, one side to Netherlands, one side to England, China, you name the country where it is today. So it evolves with the thing. But the owner, the promoter, has to be the driver of HR.
Okay.
He likes it, then only it will happen. Yeah.
Thank you. Rajiv Kapoor.
Yeah, so I'll split into two parts. One, and I'll be very quick, Raja. When the at the seeding level, when you start thinking about a business you're trying to create, at the seeding level, you should have a vision. The promoter needs to have a vision that this is where I want to be. So that the HR part, the people part, has to be seeded in his thought process at that stage. But from a business perspective, from a practical aspect, of course, when the growth starts happening, that is where that thing should be brought into practice. And again, like DK said, promoter has to be driving it. Only then it happens.
Great. Thank you. Alok.
I think, in my view, when a solid foundation has been laid, you have moved from just CV pushing and compliance and payroll to next level. One should start looking at transformational HR, because it's important that you should be able to sustain that up, once you start doing those things, rather than doing it, not succeeding, failing, and then not able to do it again. So it depends from SMEs to SMEs, the
Okay.
stages of business, but foundation has to be strong, and then you have a pragmatic approach, and then bring in transformation practices. And you don't need to bring balanced scorecard at one go. You can
Agreed.
start doing a small, management by objectives kind of thing. You don't need to bring, let's say, 16-box talent management theory, right?
Sure.
Put those things which you can do right now, and then build a success story on that.
Okay. Thanks, Alok. Now, what I hear from everyone is that HR, the owner, is the fulcrum point of the person who should drive HR. Whether he wants to bring in the transformational right from the beginning or through evolution or growth depends upon the stage of the business and how the business moves. Great. Now, picking off from here, this is the second question which I have. And this is again a rapid question. I need only 1 minute for the answer. Okay. What should be the way to introduce transformation HR? I have three options. One is do it yourself, which is where the owner does it by himself or herself. Second, you build an internal expertise of HR. Or three, you buy from the market. You bring in consultants, you bring in outsourced HR agencies to run it. So which of these three will you advise, or which will you follow, and why? Exactly 1 minute for each one of you. Now I'll start with Vineet Tukral. Vineet, what is your thought on this?
Sir, MSME is basically dream of a promoter who puts his all wealth, time, expertise, everything to create an enterprise. So to my mind, according to me, an expert HR professional is required to give the shape to the mission and the vision of a promoter in the long run. So I prefer that should be hired from outside, who is a seasoned professional.
No.
Because
So
it's
you're
a
saying
strong.
build the expert. No. Well, let me ask the question again. So you say hire a person and build the expertise internally with the HR person. You're not wanting to outsource HR at this point of time.
No, I want a full-time person to be who is as a
Great.
working with me on a permanent basis and building the organization along with me. He's a pillar of the organization. He becomes the pillar of the organization in the long run. He's a part of my success and make me success.
Thank you. Rajiv Kapoor, what do you think?
I think internal HR expertise is what will make the difference, and give them some time, because I think to develop that internal expertise, you need time to understand the culture and ethos of the organization, and then come up with transformational projects within the HR so that they are long lasting and they're understood by the employees of the organization. Anything cut and paste from outside may not work, and every organization has a different culture. So it is better to evolve from within. That's my take.
Good, thank you. Rajiv Chawla, what is your take on this?
I believe that internal system must be built. However, just because entrepreneur himself or herself is not pre-skilled and may have little knowledge, and to immediately bring in someone new full time may also take time to develop a culture. I believe outside help is extremely important, because I understand that a good coach can change a game. A great coach can transform lives. So therefore, I believe that while one should develop inside team and a core team, but that core team must be supported and supplemented with outside help, because entrepreneur himself or herself has little experience.
Okay, great, thank you. Alok, what is your thought on this?
Yeah, I think I go with what the people are saying. Yeah, we need to build internal capabilities in the organization, internal HR capabilities. But there are some areas where you probably need to outsource. I won't say outsource, but bring in expertise, especially where automation you want to do. You want to bring in some high-end practices. You may not have bandwidth to do all that because internal HR is more people focused, inward sometimes inward looking.
Okay.
And what's happening in the world of technology, what's happening in the world of high-end practices. Probably for some time, yeah, you need to get that outside expertise.
Okay, great. DK.
Yeah, I think all of these great speakers have spoken the same thing, and I also agree on this. It has to be internal capability building in any case. I would say even the CEO, the owner's designation should be changed. It should be CLO, Chief Learning Officer. He himself should call himself as Chief Learning Officer, and internally you should make the team and get an external support or specialized areas like Alok was mentioning. And we need not have a balanced scorecard. We need not have big things, simple way. He need not to go to IIM, he need not to go to Boston, he need not to go to Deloitte, he need not to go to EY. Simple basic things. Because Raja, what is happening, even if there is a very well-known HR director in a company which has got 2,000 crore MSME or SME, you call it, or 1,000 crore, he also runs to these companies to do this. Whereas he is a very capable person, why is he still going to other companies like big companies to support? So that means even you have a great HR leader in place, you pay a very great salary, and internally he has the capability, still you are looking for an external support because you need something which is going to be value add to your business entirely.
Okay.
So external is very, very important. Not that we need to get in there, but this is a fact because they bring in external experiences and they can marry it very well.
Look,
Yeah.
based on what I have seen in many MSMEs, while there's a very strong need for building expertise from within and getting an HR person, they find it difficult to attract the right person. And so what they do is they say, okay, let me get some expert. I'm not saying go to the first level consultants who are extremely costly and not affordable, but go to
Yeah.
a second level, third level HR expert as a retainer and let the person help in building the expertise within, build the
Sure.
basic policies, build the basic systems, and that's the way they go. Good. That was a wonderful discussion we had. Now I want to open it up for the audience. In fact, I'm going to take the help of Debashish, who is curating the questions which are coming in from the audience, so that we'll take the next 10-15 minutes to answer those questions. And I have some more questions. If we have time, I'll ask them as well. Debashish, would you like to throw the questions at the panel? And I, as a moderator, have the privilege and liberty of guiding it to people if they have not given the names.
Yeah, sure. So I have a question from Professor Raghuveer Singh. He has asked actually two questions, but the first question is that what would transformational HR changes in SME at initial, evolving, and growth stages do?
Is he directed to someone, or you want us to move?
So this question is not directed towards anyone,
Okay.
but out of the panel, any one or two people can take up.
Rajiv Kapoor, would you like to take a shot at this?
I'll have to hear the question again. I couldn't hear the question well. Sorry for that.
Debashish?
Yeah, the question is, what would transformational HR change in SMEs at initial, evolving, and growth stages of business? This is a question by Professor Raghuveer Singh.
Okay, so it's very difficult to articulate at the initial stage what is it going to change. It's not going to change anything. So my take on this is that, like we just answered one of the questions Raja threw at us, when do we think the transformation HR should be brought on the agenda of an MSME? So we all, I think, concurred that it's at the growth stage we should be looking at. If you do it earlier than that, I think it will be overburdening the organization. The organization may not be ready at that point of time. So we should look at a growth stage, and that is the stage when the change will be visible at that point of time. I'm not saying it will not change at the evolution stage, but I think more change will be acceptable and visible when it is at the growth stage. And it can bring in very different levels of changes depending upon what kind of an MSME we are talking about. So I'm going back to the answer we gave earlier. It is at the growth stage we think the major changes would be visible, not before that.
Okay. Oh, thanks, Rajiv. No, I just want to add on to that. When I look at the starting stage, the focus of transformation HR is to get the right people in place, get the right policies in place. So that is what will happen in the initial stages. You don't need too much of development and performance appraisals and all that in the initial stage. As you grow in the organization, as the journey continues, you start focusing on performance management, rewards,
Absolutely.
linking it back to development and others. And then you move on to the stage where you create employee experiences, employee engagement, reward and recognition, and that's how you link everything together. So as you said, it moves from what is the focus area of the HR persons in each of these in times of start, evolution and growth stage. Okay, next question, Debashish.
Yeah, the next question is by Ms. Shweta Pathak, and she's asking, everyone talks about transformational HR, but most focus is on administrative roles such as payroll, statutory compliance and recruitment. Especially in today's time, companies don't want to put cost into such initiatives. How would HR sustain when they don't want administrative jobs? It is difficult to manage both. One of them gets ignored.
Okay.
So she has a question and a concern. Yeah.
Okay, Alok, do you want to take a swipe at it, and I'll come back with my own thoughts?
Yeah, sure. Shweta, when there is a vision of doing great things, and when there is a vision of creating value for the organization, unless so of course administrative HR or the day-to-day HR is necessary. That's a building block without any doubt. But unless you create some transformational HR practices, you won't be able to get the right talent. You won't be able to develop them. You won't be able to take care of them. You won't be able to worry about their well-being, their careers, and then linking it back to the organization culture. There can be many elements of transformational HR, but some of these of talent, their development, their engagement, organization culture, we have seen experiences. We have worked in some kind of environments where we have seen how this has helped. So it's all going back to what kind of organization you want to build, what kind of businesses you want to build, and what kind of value you want to create for the shareholders, for the stakeholders. So it is much more than administrative HR.
Okay.
Yeah, Raja.
Thanks, Alok. Shweta, I just want to take it on. Some of the basic administrative HR, which is a hygiene, which is 100% required. Right now, we are in a stage, thanks to technology, that many of that can be automated, and can be automated precisely with not much of mistakes, so that the hygiene factor is taken care of. And you are absolutely right that unless hygiene factor is taken care of, you can't do transformational HR. At the end of the day, if the payroll is not coming on time and my leave balance is not showing properly, or if my advance is not being given properly, these things are an issue. So you have to look at the hygiene factor. HR folks now realize that they don't need to look only at strategic HR, because the automation and every technology enablement has helped them manage the hygiene better than what they used to. So that's how I look at moving in from hygiene to transformation. Debashish, the next question.
Yeah, the next question is by Mr. Sunil Abrol, and he is asking whether HR consultants and outsourcing will be more acceptable to MSME owners.
Okay, I don't see Rajiv Chawla on the line. Is he there, Rajiv? Rajiv Chawla? He seemed to have lost contact with him. Okay, let me put this across. Let me put this to DK.
Okay.
DK, what is your thought on this question?
Yeah, because they can't afford it at a stage, in terms of they don't have a great talent available within the company. So they will certainly go to a consultant. As Rajiv was mentioning, that this business owner also needs a coach, a mentor, a coach. And I said CLO, Chief Learning Officer. I think that is what makes a big difference to a small, medium enterprise where he gets an outside coach, but he is building internal capability. He is building internal, that doesn't mean he remains there for 5 years. He has a mission, he creates that mission, he makes that happen in a way moving forward, and he moves out. And they will accept. And most of the companies, most of the organizations, not only in India, we have MSMEs in one side in Canada, and one side in Brazil, and one side in Thailand, and one side in India, and they were accepting consultants to be part of their team as coaches.
Okay.
That's what Rajiv was also mentioning.
Okay.
It's
Thanks,
possible.
Sunil. To respond to Sunil Abrol, I think what has happened is that at the initial stage, not every MSME invests in a HR talent or HR expertise to be part of the internal team. So they want to see and grow that. So to that extent, they are willing to get in an HR consultant, as DK said, but necessarily not the top level of the McKinseys of the world or so and so.
Sure.
But they will go in for a person who's an HR expert, who's an individual, and who has a differential pricing for SMEs. Not charge the moon, but help in setting the basic base for the internal as they groom the internal expertise in. Okay, Debashish, next question.
Yeah, the next question is by Dr. Virendra Pratap Singh. If ROI is shown to the business owners impacting bottom line, should not transformational HR be taken up by SME owners? Because the promoters do not have anything wrong with them, but if they see the ROI, perhaps they may accept transformational HR. So it's a statement and a question together.
Rajiv Chawla, were you able to hear the question?
Yes, that's right. That's right.
All right.
All right.
Can you take this question? Yeah.
Yes, I shall. How I wish this kind of a proposal comes to me, and which means that the performance even of the consultant in this case is also measured. And if such a consultant is paid on the basis of performance, nothing like it. Any entrepreneur would love it. We burn our fingers when sometimes we engage consultancies and people and who fail to deliver. Now, it could be because of our shortcomings or whatever. And therefore, the engagement of an outside consultant is also as important. And their pre-assessment is also extremely important, so that the final proposal and the outcome and the roadmap is very, very clear. And if a coach or a consultancy or a third party is very clear, experienced, I'm sure ROI steps can be measured. And if they can be measured and payment terms are accordingly, any entrepreneur would love to. I would love to sign this contract tonight, if possible.
Oh, thank you, Rajiv. So people who are listening, create the ROIs and go to Rajiv. Next question, Devjish.
Okay, this is a question coming from Ms. Reena Ahuja. What is India SME Forum doing to sensitize the SME owners to having wholesome HR practice?
DK, all yours.
Yeah. In fact, we are the largest SME forum in the country with 86,000 paid members. There are organizations which has members, but they are not paid members. We have 86,000 paid members, 9 lakh subscribers to our organization, 1.27 crore database, and we are one of the oldest. We have been promoting, and in fact, I wanted to talk about this here. We would like to look at SMEs in a very different way. We would like to create medium, small, and micro three levels of organization. When you look at medium, they are the organizations where we expect them to create great HR, discipline just like Japanese, R&D and design just like Germans, productivity just like Chinese or even Thai, marketing like Americans. And they will build up the second level, which is very beautiful, which is the small, and then there's micro. So three organizations can work together, and when the top grows, second grows and third grows. So we have a definite plan of creating a different MSME of this world, which is Indianization. I call it Indianization because Make in India has to be very powerful. And in case we don't do beyond COVID, then we have lost the big opportunity of life. So therefore, please come to India SME Forum. We have a major plans for doing work with various SME organizations, 86,000 already, and we will be crossing by December almost double. That's what's happening during the COVID days. We have done a lot of work during COVID days with our organizations and take this roadmap forward. Create MSME of the world, which is Indianization, Make in India, Make in India, Make in India. Let's create the dream of Prime Minister Modi possible. And it's possible in case we all combine together and do it. Yeah.
Thank you. Devashish, next question.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. DK Singh, DK Bakshi, because India Summit Forum is also the strategic partner for this SMEKaran program. Next question is by PR Singh. What tools can HR managers use in SME organizations to move from transactional to transformational HR?
From transactional to transformational. Rajiv Kapoor.
Transactional to transformational.
Yeah, Rajiv Kapoor.
Okay, so I think it is again, like you mentioned, Raja, it has to go in phases. So these are initiatives, not tools basically. So we have to look at the initiatives when we start those initiatives. So more of employee involvement, employee engagement is where the transactional stuff starts happening. And like I mentioned earlier, linkages with the strategy, the HR strategy linked to the group strategy or the organization strategy, that is where the transformational aspect of HR starts coming to the fore and it starts giving ROI to the business. So, and that there's a toolkit, but that toolkit would be different for every organization, because every organization has a different need. So I think linkage to the business strategy and a deep linkage, not just at the surface level. You go deep into the strategy of the organization, link each aspect to people, and through that to HR. I think that is what my recommendation would be, to look at the group goals, group strategy, and link your HR with that. And whatever tools and initiatives you need at that point of time, those are required.
Alok, do you want to add on anything to that?
I think only one line. When HR starts from HR for HR to HR for business, transformation will start happening. When we start measuring the HR KPIs for business, the transformation starts happening.
Okay, I just want to add on, if in simple language, if you do the AMRD, you will be able to move from transactional to transformation. And people love abbreviations, so, and acronyms. AMRD is nothing but focus on attraction, focus on motivation, focus on retention, focus on development. If you follow this order of moving your HR practices and focus from attracting the right people, motivating the people, retaining the people, and developing the people, you would have moved from transactional HR to transformational HR.
All right.
Next question.
Next question is by Abhay Kapoor, Mr. Abhay Kapoor. He says most of the owners feel that HR is only required for hiring and payroll. Rest all is luxury and a cost to big organizations, not to SME. How can we show the benefit of HR to them? Some of it was perhaps covered in ROI, but if there is more addition which can be done, yeah.
Vineet, would you like to take this question of what do people see beyond the hiring?
Sir, come again. I'm not able to,
Devashish,
So
can
the
you please?
question, the question is that most of the field owners feel that HR is only required for hiring and payroll, and no other activity or other activities of HR are luxury. So how can HR show benefit to a business owner?
I don't
asking
agree,
this from
sir,
a
with
business
this.
owner.
Yeah, I don't agree with this, sir. The HR is not just hiring; it's basically training people, retaining them, motivating them, developing their skills, which so that become a part of the growth of the organization. So
Rajiv
HR is
Kapoor.
not just hiring.
Okay, Rajiv
Yeah,
Kapoor.
so I just want to add here that I think HR is a big brand builder nowadays. I think the differentiator, and HR is building big employer brands. I think so that is a differentiator which an good HR team can bring to the table. And I think large organizations are using it to the best of their advantage. So HR is much beyond hiring and retention and payroll and firing.
DK, you
And
want to add something or something?
Yeah, I think Rajiv has taken my point, and it's a fact of life. When I left India in 2003, up to next 4 or 5 years, people were still thinking that Lakshar Parker has opened an office in Bangkok. They did not believe this because that was the brand equity of Mr. Chan and Lakshar Parker, pilot pens in the country. And this one HR guy who was known as HRD Saab in the beginning, when I joined them, became the powerful HR person in the fraternity. So what I am trying to propagate here, which Rajiv Kapoor also said, HR is not only motivating and training, it is a brand builder. Even in the SME sector, when you are supporting the business owner by your experiences of life, and you are actually building the brand of that SME also.
Okay.
And I am welcoming in the India SME Forum such case studies, and we are planning to have a series of case studies of small medium enterprises, even if it is 50 crores, I don't care. From 50 crores to 1,000 crore rupees, we need to have case studies coming forward and showcasing it to the world that what can be done in the country.
Okay.
So that's a very important point. Yeah.
Thanks, DK. Vineet, you wanted to add something, or can I go to the next question?
Yeah, we can go for the next question, sir.
Okay, Devashish.
The next question is by Mr. Rahul.
This is going to be the last. This is the last question I'm taking for the panel because we have to be cognizant of the time.
Yes. I think yes, absolutely. We have many questions here where actually participants are loving the interaction, and I am seeing question boxes just increasing. But we'll take maybe this last question, and if it's a good question, we'll take one more. But this one is important. That what is the, and this is a question by Mr. Rahul Mendirata. He's asking, what is the current percentage of, and this is important, traditional HR, transformational HR, and transactional HR in SMEs? His opinion is he feels that transformational HR is very less or nil. What is the reason and what can be done? That's the question. Very good question. Traditional HR, transactional HR, transformational HR.
DK,
What is,
you with your knowledge on
what
the
is the
MSME
percentage?
market, MSMEs from the SME forum, can you answer this question?
Yeah, he has talked about 3 T's, and I will add one more T, which we just discussed 2 weeks back when Padma Shri Dr. Pritam Singh was one of the strategic leadership webinar, and that even Dr. Asha Bandarkar talked about. T as transparency. The moment organizations have a clear culture of complete transparency flowing from top to bottom, including the associates, it's a win-win situation. So you will move from one T to other T to 3T with a clear trust, transparency, which will lead to the overall transformation into the bottom line. When I'm talking to Vineetji here, when I'm talking to Rajivji here, finally the bottom line has also got to get translated. That money has to get translated into bottom line. Then the balance sheet has to show. So from 3T, we move to trust, transparency, as well as translation into the money into the bank.
Okay.
That's how I can say.
Rajiv
Yeah.
Chawla, would you want to respond saying not much of transformation HR is happening, but other things are happening more? What sort of percentages would you see in SMEs from your experience?
So you have to repeat your question.
And the question from Debashish, you want to repeat the question so that Rajiv can respond as well?
The question, Mr. Rajiv Chawla, is that Mr. Rahul Madrata says that according to him, there are three kinds of HR: traditional HR, transformational HR, and transactional HR in SMEs. And according to him, his question is, he feels that higher percentage is of traditional and transactional HR and 0% is of transformational HR. So what is the reason and what can be done?
See, the reason is evolution. In fact, in MSMEs, at the micro level, initially, if I may say so, we are not even compliant. An organization may not even be following the basic government statutory compliances. So it is important that a micro enterprise moves from the micro to small, becomes compliant first. And then as the size grows and as the business grows and as the vision and the confidence in investment of the entrepreneur grows, then he brings in people, engages third-party agencies, and that is when the transformational HR has a major role. Transformational HR would always come at the third stage once the basic foundations, the basic statutory compliances, and fundamentals of an organization are in place. And that is where a small enterprise can think of or dream of moving to the medium level or the large corporate level. And therefore, it is never zero, but primarily it is the transactional and the basic traditional HR practices that must come in first and prepare the ground for a transformation.
Thank you, Rajiv. Debashish, thank you.
Raja,
for the rest of the people.
Raja, one question
Yeah,
which has come, which is good question. If you are okay, can I ask one last question? It's a good question which has come.
Look, I am okay because the time is 8 o'clock and that's the reason why I wanted to close. One question is fine.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the last question is by Amit Kalra of Infinity Advertising. He's asking how is the role of HR evolved? Has the role of HR evolved as HRBP in SMEs, or is it still a transactional HR? Meaning in SME, has HR become HRBP or is it still transactional?
Rajiv, what is your thought, Rajiv Kapoor?
I think if you look at the majority, I would say at about 90% population of MSMEs, it is still transactional. And very few, I would say, just the tip of the iceberg would be HRBP kind of a role. But happy to say that it is there, the thought is there, it is showing its roots, green shoots are coming up. But we have a long way to go.
Okay, thanks. Debashish, thanks. And to the audience, we are sorry that we're not able to take all your questions because we have to conclude now and move on. In my own words, very difficult to conclude what these luminaries in the panel have said. But what I want to stress is that MSMEs are critical for the growth of the economy. And for MSMEs to go, transformational HR needs to be the focus. And this can be driven only by the owner and the promoter by showing the importance for the transformational HR. And he or she needs to treat HR like a tea bag. If they want a stronger company, just like you want stronger tea, you dip the tea longer. You have to ensure that you have a strong HR practice and you dip into HR. If you want it light, use it and throw. So that is what I will think, that the onus is on the promoters and owners, and also the credibility of the HR people who get into the system to show that SMEs are the future and how they can help in growth of SMEs and in turn the growth of the economy. Mamta, over to you. Thank you so much for the panel members for such a patient time with me and for bearing me.
Okay, thank you very much. This was a very, very interesting discussion. Thank you for your patience. I know we're 3 minutes over time. I'd like to especially thank the SME India group who've done an excellent job in collaborating with us and sponsoring part of the program. I'd also like to thank each of the speakers, Mr. Rajiv Chawla, Mr. Vineet Chakral, Mr. Rajiv Kapoor, Mr. Alok Nigam, Mr. D.K. Bakshi, and our very erudite and able Mr. Vardarajan, who was a wonderful moderator. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, if you all are not members of NHRD, please become members. There's a huge amount of value. There are leadership sessions, mentorship programs. There's a women networking program called Wings. There is SMEKaran. We're just into the second workshop. There's another one. There are upskilling workshops that we're going to have, and we have a whole number of programs through our zonal teams that have been set up right across to cover all industries. And I fully agree with what Mr. D.K. Bakshi said, that there are different kinds of enterprises and they should be broken up into small, medium and large. One answer will not fit all. It's been interesting. Wish we had more time. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, and stay safe. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
NHRD signs
Okay.
off today.
Thank you. Bye.
SMEKaran समीकरण है ये SMEKaran aligning HR to business.